Hi, it's Jen back with the Simply Sweet Table Topper series we just kicked off in February. This is the March project. Of course, I could not resist these darling shamrocks for, of course, St. Patrick's Day in March. Lots of beautiful shamrocks, and one lucky four-leaf clover is included here. A lot of fun, some beautiful arches over that with some lazy daisies and a little bit of a gold bead. All of that will be included in your kit as far as the beading, pre-fused laser cut applique, and of course your background fabric, your backing fabric. Love that. As I said in February, I was really inspired by the wool project that we had done. Now, a few years ago, it was a club that we ran. Now we have some limited kits remaining if you want to pick that up. But if you love that convenience of pre-fused laser cut applique, obviously the colors are more vibrant, be sure to pick up your laser cut kit. That will include your pattern, and inside that you will find your diagrams. When you receive that, you'll of course unfold that and align those two pages. We have some alignment lines here, and then carefully cut out around that outermost line, and you'll have your shape, which we'll be using right away as we build the background for the project. So just a reminder, we went over that in a lot of detail in our February filming of that. So be sure to check that out. So this is kind of just a brief overview. In your kit, of course, you'll have that darling fabric. And I always like to keep fabric, right? I only want to use as much as I have to and then put the rest in my stash, especially something as unique as this. So I know the pattern says cut 2 16-inch squares, but I've got an idea for you that will help you actually economize your fabric even more and be able to have a big enough piece left over to maybe use for a small coordinating project. So instead of cutting those out to 16 inches, and I've pre-fused, I've used the fusible fleece, and I did cut that one out to 16 inches. You'll want to be sure to pick that up. 3 yards will get you through the entire 12-month series. Very available, by the way, locally if you want to pick that up from maybe a local sewing store, Joann's. But about 3 yards of fusible fleece will do you for all 12. Iron that down to, of course, the background. Now, if you just fold this in half, see how much of this really could be cut apart and set aside. Once you have that down, just like we did before, you'll simply place your diagram on top. If you feel nervous about it shifting, you can pin it in place or just hold it with your arm and simply trace around. And I use my friction pen for that. This is again where we're going to start diving right away into our thread. I chose my green and I carefully sewed right on that line here. And I used a shortened stitch length so I could absolutely hit those valleys right there. Once that's done, just like before, we will cut about a scant quarter all the way around and clip into those valleys. And I used my cool pins. I've recently found these cool pins. They're incredible. They're from the Gypsy Quilter. I love that these are heat resistant. They feel great in my hands and they easily glide right into the fabric. So if you have not tried those, these are incredible. I absolutely love them. And of course, I love my patchwork pins too. But these have just a little bit more strength to them. So if you're going through a lot of layers, like the fusible fleece, they're just perfect for that. So I'll go ahead and cut this out. And then I just want to remind you of how we'll end up turning it through. And then we'll get our background ready to go. And then we'll move right on to our applique. I'll be right back. So I'm back. I, of course, did the scant trim and then just a little bit of a snip in those valleys. Now we'll turn this over. So we're on the side that does not have the fusible fleece. And again, we're just feeling, it's a feel that I know I have the fusible fleece and the fabric it's attached to down there. And then this upper portion, and you're trying to grasp right in the middle, because of course that's what the circle is going to cover up our opening that we're about to cut. So be sure you're not cutting anywhere in here. It needs to be pretty well centered. We'll make a snip here and a snip here. And of course, we'll turn that through just like we did in the previous month and smooth that out. I've got my point turner here, which is a great tool. Anytime, you know, not just this project, but if you're ever needing to turn something through and you have a curve, I love this part of the tool. Or sometimes you're trying to get a 90-degree corner. And then, of course, there's that other side of the tool, which is the point component. So Clover notions are a go-to notion company. They're made in Japan. And I love the quality of their work. So once you've got that turned through, we're getting in with our curved portion of the point turner, smoothing everything out. We'll get that done, and then give it a good press. We want everything out absolutely as smooth as possible, because we will come back and you would just top stitch around the edge. And you don't have to do that now. You could do that step later or now, but I'll get this turned all the way out, smoothed out, ironed, and then we're going to move on to the applique and hand embroidery. So this has now, of course, been pressed out. There's our opening. Let's put that aside for the moment as we move back toward now using our diagram. In the kit, of course, you have this lovely scallop background cut for you. You're like, thank goodness, that's why I buy laser cut kits. And we'll grab for our laser cut shapes. Talk about a time saver. Just like before, whenever you're trying to remove that paper backing, if you just give a bit of a pinch like that, just kind of don't be shy, it will release and you'll be able to remove that paper. So two things that we want to do here. We need to get our mind thinking now toward a micron pen, a permanent marker. We were using the friction pen before as we chased around the diagram, and you could have used a micron there, no problem. But now it's not an option, because this whole thing is ultimately going to be ironed down, of course, to our background. Then we began doing our sewing, our machine applique, as well as hand embroidery. Now we need to grab for that micron pen. And also we will begin to place our shapes down, and of course we know we need to move them over to an ironing board, a wool pressing mat, whatever you're using there at home. Let me just bring that over here. I trace this in advance here, and notice how for the lazy daisies, I want to call this to your attention. We're going to try to zoom in on this. You can see the faint outline of the lazy daisy, and that's what is shown here, of course, on the real project. We never want to draw onto our background that full footprint of that lazy daisy. We talked about that last month, because a lazy daisy, you never actually know where it's going to land, but it's okay to mark the middle and those four corners, because you know you can hit that. And we'll review that stitch today. But as you look at what I've done, and it's very faint, I have that center dot and the north, south, east, and west, if we want to call it that, for each of those. That's all we need. And a very faintly drawn arch. It's just to say this is where the stitch goes. So I have a very delicate micron pen. So whatever you're using, if you want to use something from home, a permanent marker, just make sure it doesn't have a very bold line, because that can come back at you later when your stitch doesn't completely cover that line and now it's kind of showing, and you don't want that. You don't want that. So you make sure you're using something quite delicate here. We have those available on the website in a variety of colors. I just got a black here with me today. So we'll turn that on, and isn't that lovely? Like, yes, I can see what I'm doing. And that's, of course, where we're going to trace everything on. Let me just get that lined up. And I did all of my tracing of my line first, but this is also now where we can lay everything down here where it goes. Isn't that just, I mean, it's just, you don't even have to try, right? You're not straining your eyes. Back in the day, we all say that expression, I was taping this up to a sliding glass door, and that looks great on a sunny day during the day. But at night when you're trying to craft, when the little ones are asleep, doesn't work very well. So it's nice to be able to turn the light box on day or night and have this beautiful illumination. So just wanted to mention that. Two different colors. We chose kind of that limier green and two different greens. Again, here and every other one, we chose our limey green and then kind of our kind of more mid green in here. And of course, iron everything down. I'll just iron down a few shapes, but I want to go right into our hand embroidery because we got a fun new stitch for you today. I'll just take this over here, iron a few of those down on a medium heat, just a reminder of that. Okay. And of course, you would continue iron everything down. You could do it all at once or do it in sections like that. That's fine. I'm going to clean up a bit. Actually, let's do this. Let's go ahead. Let's pretend everything is ironed down, all the shapes, just like before. We're going to remove this. I'm going to do this, and then I'll clean up a bit, and we'll go into our hand embroidery. We move this out of the way. We go to our background now. And now your goal is to just visually have the same distance. And of course, you're trying to just sandwich that. You could have, if you wanted to, lay a ruler from point to point, make sure all these points line up, or just visually go, I think that is aligned. I'm kind of just checking these line up, these line up. When you're satisfied with that, then you'll iron that down. And of course, our centerpiece would be going down as well, right? You're definitely going to want to put that centerpiece down first before obviously you iron that down, because you don't want to have to try to find that geographical center. Now you couldn't see it. So all of those shapes will certainly be going down before you would be doing this step. And everything is down. Once that's completed, applique begins. By all means, I would not begin the hand embroidery until all of that machine applique happened. I've done that in the reverse order. Here's what I discovered. Let's say that we got excited, we didn't want to stitch down the applique, and we just start hand embroidering. I have a lot of contact with the project as I'm doing the embroidery. Sometimes remember that the fusible webbing is only a temporary adhesive. It's meant to be stitched down. I just noticed that some of that might be coming up. So definitely stitch everything down first. That's where these two thread colors come in for the shamrocks and your lovely lucky four-leaf clover. We've learned something. We did a little bit of research. Shamrocks are always 3 petals. And if you see this, it's a clover. So we learned that all shamrocks are clovers, but not all clovers are shamrocks. So we've done our homework. We wanted to make sure we understood the significance and relevance of these lovely shamrocks. So back to what I was saying, stitch everything down, of course, and then with your 12 weight, hopefully you can see that. I went around and did a little bit of echo stitching around my shamrocks as well as my four-leaf clover and out here around the perimeter as well as around the center circle. And I used a 12 weight, so I wanted it to be bulkier, denser, to have it more almost look embossed. So once that's done, now this gorgeous thread will come into play. Let me clean up and we will come back. We'll get some close-up. We're going to be doing the stem stitch. If you're like, I really love a resource, be sure to grab that. Maybe you want to do a different stitch on the arch. That's up to you. I'm just going to show you today how to do the stem stitch. I'll clean up and we'll be right back. So I'm using this gorgeous, wonderful dazzle thread. You can see it is absolutely spectacular. 2 different colors, there's metallic in there. One thing I've discovered after using this thread is I can try to wrap it up and it just keeps coming undone, which is why we discovered the Hugo's amazing tape. Definitely an investment in this type of thread. Just cut a small piece of it, and then when you wrap it to itself like that, it's not sticky to the product. It's like a vinyl cling. It's amazing. So something you might just discover, as you're trying to keep your thread rack organized, this will keep coming undone. So something you might want to consider. If you struggle with knots, thread magic may be what you want to do. I'm going to put a little bit of that in here today. We are going to be using this very dynamic thread, but we also want to tame that thread. This is called thread magic. One of these things is going to last you maybe your lifetime. You just don't use much of it. And I really only use it on specialty thread that can have a little bit of a mind of its own as this wants to try to naturally untwist. So remember how we have, that's the center of the lazy daisy, and those are the four corners. We have our beautiful arch and then that. So why don't we just start as a review? Remember how I said you'd want to stitch this down? This is exactly why. Just stuff would obviously, it starts to come undone. This is supposed to be a very temporary adhesive, but we'll just ignore that. Come up through the center. This is a review of the lazy daisy. Right there. And I've got the knot in the back here. I'm kind of just holding it off to the side with my nail back there, going right back through that same place I came up. Notice I just trapped that loop. Why? Because I need to expose that dot right there. I need to see that. And I'm going to let go and form my first lazy daisy. Now I'm going to come down on the other side of that loop to my background. Now on the opposite side, I'm going to work on opposites. I just always have. I don't know why, I just do. I can either turn the project around or I don't need to really. All I know my loop is over there, right? Just need to keep that nice and open as we come up to our dot. And we make another lovely little petal over there. I love seeing that. I don't know if you can see it with the camera. That metallic is so pretty. Back up through the center. Coming straight down. Keep that loop open. Just like that. So we can see our dot. Okay. And one more time. Then we are going to start that stem stitch. Maybe you can see it better from that angle. It starts to get a little bulky in the center. That's okay. And ultimately, we're going to cover that up in a second step. After we do all of this, we'll come back and we'll add those beautiful gold beads. Obviously, that's an option. I think the project is darling without it, but I like beads. So if you want to add those, I'll certainly go over that and show you how to add those. And then we'll anchor that. Okay. Now what I'll do, knowing I want to come up here and really begin our stitch, I'm just going to look back here. I'm going to kind of dive underneath here. Try to keep the back as clean as I can. Come up in the general area, shallow, so I'm not seeing my thread diving underneath, of course. So with the stem stitch, we will come up and we'll go down a distance, and you want to kind of memorize that distance. And I'll keep the thread off to the side, and I'm going to split the distance. right about there on the line. Now, here's where my thread is. Here's that point. Go that distance again. From here to here is a distance. Visualize that distance is about, oh, probably about right there. And again, I'm trapping that. We're going to come up there. You see the twisting that's beginning to happen? That's what makes it look like cording. Again, here. Looks like I want a little bit longer. That's okay. So guess what makes it a hand project, right? Here. And again, up here. And look at this beautiful cord, this twisting that's happening is so pretty. I'll continue my journey all the way across, of course, to the other side. And then when you want to end this stitch, let's just pretend that we went all the way over. And of course, I do my lazy daisies. The easiest way to end the stitch is just to hop over on the other side of the line, just like that, and then tie off in the back, of course. Whenever we are going to tie off, we're just going to tie off twice. Now, what I'm going to actually do, and I'll do it off camera just because I'm like, I think you saw probably enough of that stitch. I want to stitch all the way across here. I'm going to stitch all the way over here because I want to show you, we're going to come back and add a bead, and without cutting our thread, we're going to come over here. But we're going to do it in a very clever way that we are hiding that through the stitching that's happening here so that it's secured, it's not getting caught on anything where you might be displaying the project. So I'll get that stitched through. I'll go ahead and do those lazy daisies. When I come back, we're going to move into our straw needles and we're going to do some beading. So again, I'm using the chenille needle today. You could be using the chenille or the embellishing. This is a much longer needle, same job. This just happens to be a shorter needle. You'll want to be sure to pick up those. And we'll be needing to move toward the straw needles because of course these are too big. You know, our bead is simply not going to fit on these bulky needles. So we're using the size 11. And we have a couple different brands. Any needle you have that's going to fit that bead will work. So don't get too hung up on the size 11. If it fits, it's great. So I will get this stitched out and I'll be right back. So I now have the straw needles. I talked about that. Anything really, you know, the easiest way to know if it's going to work is just simply put the bead through the needle. If it goes, it's a winner. It's going to work. So what we've done, of course, we've stitched our lazy daisies. We have our beautiful arch. Again, if you don't want to put the beads on, skip it. It's still already beautiful. Obviously, this amazing fairy frost has glitter in it. This is just kind of icing on the cake. I took a strand, which either green works. You could even use, I don't think I'd use the 12 weight, but I took this and I put both ends through the eye of the needle to create a loop down here. I want the strength of 2 strands, but what this does is it helps me, I now don't have to tie a knot. Here's what I mean. I will come up here through the middle, not all the way through. I'm going to leave a little bit of a tail here, and I'm just going to go straight back down. What I'm going to do back on this side, that loop, I'm going to bring my needle through it. And now we're secured to the background better than any knot could ever be. And I don't have an additional knot on the back. So that's a really nice way to go ahead and get that started. You will come up right through the middle of that. And again, I just kind of put my beads in a bowl. Otherwise, they tend to roll around on my crafting table. and just get one onto your needle. And we'll go right back down that middle. And pull it nice and tight. And because you have doubled up your thread, I don't think you need to crank on it too hard, but we don't want this loose where the bead's flopping over, so you want it to be snug. Now remember I said we want to bead this other thing, but we're absolutely not going to just come across the back like that. But what we will do, notice we have our track back here. We'll simply go shallow. Our needle is very horizontal, and I'm just threading it through where I've already been. And that little bit of a longer tail, I can cut that right now and get that out of there. But I'm just going to keep threading my way through, staying on the back side. Let's see, what have I done? There we go, pulled that through. And we're almost to the other side. And of course, then you're just going to go bead. I'm going to come right through the middle of that because that's where we're headed. That's where we're going to put in our next bead. And we'll come over here, pop up through the middle, put our beautiful bead on, tie off in the back. Super simple. Do that real quick. It's so pretty. I love the beads. And I'm always looking for glass beads. These are glass and with a metallic kind of overlay, just because they're more beautiful, better quality. And there's our beautiful bead. Look at that. It's so pretty. Again, just like before, we just go in shallow, so we're not coming to the front. Create our loop. We're going to go through once, create a loop, go through twice. And now we're just going to cut that, and we are done. And of course, you're just going to continue. This can fray as making contact, of course. When it starts to fray, get a new strand. So you don't want anything longer than about from your, kind of from your fingers to your shoulder. Cut as much as you need to do one arch and then start with a fresh piece each time so you make sure you don't lose any of that gorgeous metallic detail. So you can see that that beautiful thread is so pretty in the stem stitch. Again, that was just my idea. If you want to do something completely different, go ahead and pick up the Embroidery and Crazy Quilt Stitch tool, and we would love to see what you're doing. Of course, we love that. So thank you for joining me today. Of course, I'll be back next month as we work on our Simply Sweet table topper for April.